Coming up, how to break out of the man box.
To be a man is all these things in this box, and you cannot step outside of that box.
What will it take to reverse rates of violence against women and children that are off the charts?
Much of that violence is a result of this toxic masculinity.
Men have to get involved here. Men have to stand up.
Ready to reclaim the role of men as providers, protectors, and parents.
What it means to be a man is to have patience.
Ahead, beyond the man box, a men's movement begins in Alaska.
Alaska, where there are old triumphs, but also new frontiers, with challenges as great as the state itself, but a belief that the best is yet to come, bringing you the faces, the places, and the spirit of the last frontier. This is Frontiers with Rhonda McBride.
Welcome to Frontiers. If you go by the numbers, it is a grim picture. Alaska has a sexual assault rate 2.5 times the national average, 6 times higher for children. And for the numbers of women killed by men, we have the highest rate in the nation. That's why a group gathered in Juneau to launch a men's movement. They came from across the state to say, enough is enough.
Creator, if I have been hurt by the actions or words of another, help me to practice forgiveness so I don't continue to hurt myself or others.
Southeast Alaskans once used sap from spruce trees to heal wounds.
The wound will heal from the inside out with the application of the spruce pitch.
An elder's prayer for the men to begin their work in a spirit of forgiveness,
empathy, and compassion for the one who hurt me or the one I hurt. And my wound will heal from the inside out.
The wounds in many communities run deep.
I had no role models my whole entire young life. I had no positive males.
Damon Bell Holter grew up in Heidelberg.
Every single day, I witnessed domestic violence. That is why I'm here.
Basketball became Damon's escape.
You know, Heidelberg is very well known for basketball. So I would watch all these men who I aspired to be like abusing women and being womanizers.
And when he went on to a career in professional basketball, he questioned what he heard from his teammates.
And we were asking each other, what's your body count? How many women have you slept with? And that's cringy.
I've had the journey of spending nights in the emergency room with women after they've been assaulted, and much of that violence is a result of this toxic masculinity that hurts families, and it hurts men, and it hurts women.
Toxic masculinity, not an easy subject for men to face.
Like you said, it permeates. I feel like it's like throughout our whole system, so it's so subtle. It's hard to pinpoint where it is.
My daughter's lives are on the line. Women in our community, their lives are on the line.
That's why what older men say to boys and younger men, and even to each other, could have life and death consequences.
Creator gave us a whole plethora, like a whole entire rainbow of emotions, and yet because of the man box, because of what we define to be a man, we're only allowed to choose a handful of those emotions to respond to a scenario. I can't cry in front of my family members. I can't cry in front of women, because that means I have to step outside the boundaries of what it means to be a man.
The spirit of violence, you outsmart it. And you begin to create a calmness and an ability to walk in the world where you can, in fact, love everyone.
There are many emotions in this room, and anger is definitely one of them.
Because I'm afraid if I just think about anger, then it's like that typical man thing. I want to punch something, you know? I want to go kick somebody's ass. There's somebody out there that I need to go after to fix the problem, when a lot of times it's something inside.
But Dallas Goldtooth summed it up.
We have to kick our own asses.
The start of a men's movement in Alaska. New voices that ask, what can I do to stop the violence?
The women have been holding us up long enough. Men need to get involved.
and stay involved.
Be honest with you, I'd rather be out fishing, but here I am.
Ahead, new tools for the man box. The power of tradition and culture, how this fledgling men's movement plans to put them to good use. The Juneau men's gathering also involved couples. Lyle and Kolene James. They've been together for 15 years, and they say that they've helped each other heal from old traumas, and now they want to share what they know. Lyle grew up in an abusive family, and Kolene says her first marriage was violent, but together they worked hard to break free from the past.
The
Tlingit once paddled these waters in large, seaworthy canoes.
A long time ago, our ancestors, they would go into the ocean to gather strength, not only physically, but mentally.
Lyle James says they would routinely go sit in the ocean, even in the winter.
Breathe slowly.
To condition themselves to survive should their canoe capsize.
Think about the strength that you need to continue on.
A baptism of sorts to prepare the men for a journey that will feel both uncomfortable and unfamiliar. When they speak out against violence, their words won't always be welcome.
My Tlingit name is Xeetli.eesh, and that's the name I actually prefer to go by. This is a name that was given to me before I was born.
A name of a highly respected elder. A name he tries to live up to.
Tlingit. Tlang is the shoreline. Git, people of the shoreline. And it's been simplified to Tlingit.
Lyle believes language and culture evolved to help humans navigate life. This song is about a tidal wave that swept people up in their canoes and trapped them behind a glacier. Two elderly women had to lead the way out. As they paddled through an underground river beneath the glacier, the men were afraid to follow.
The things that you folks are doing here at this conference, I know it might be scary because we don't know what's going to happen as we go under this journey. We don't know what's going to be at the end, on the other side, waiting for us.
Lyle and his wife Kolene hope to be like those elders who guided their people to safety.
There's not enough people talking about this hard issue of violence, not in a way that's constructive.
But talk they must, both men and women.
Can't do this alone. The men have got to. They've got to do it.
Goodness, sheesh.
A word used for thank you, but it means much more.
Goodness, sheesh means without you, this is not possible.
A way to say everyone can make a difference.
So this second figure here is Duk Strongman.
Unbeknownst to his village, Strongman would sneak off in the chill of darkness.
So he'd be sitting in the ocean throughout the night.
The other men had no idea.
Those men that were training would walk by every morning and tease Duk, give him a hard time, saying, "You're so lazy. Why don't you go get wood, do the women's work?"
Which Strongman was happy to do. But things changed in a battle with a giant sea lion. After many men died, Strongman knocked it out with his fist.
Held it up to everybody and ripped it in half. And everybody was so shocked that they just had realized what he had done.
The moral of the story?
Knowledge and strength comes from anywhere and everywhere.
Even from a child who survived abuse.
I was beaten quite often. And I was sexually assaulted. I was raped.
Violence, Lyle traces back several generations to boarding schools that punished children like his grandmother for speaking Tlingit.
They actually grabbed her by the back of her hair, lifted her up, and carried her to the front of the class. While one held her hair, the other held her jaw, and they shoved a bar of soap in her mouth.
That's why language and culture have helped Lyle to heal from the inside out. And although this song comes to the shores of Auk Bay, all the way from Hawaii, it's a call to the spirit to prepare for the unknown on a journey of healing and hope. Lyle James says his past abuse made him shut down emotionally. That is until he met Kolene. Though not easy, when they married, they made a pact to talk openly about their old traumas so that they could truly break with the past and build a future for their kids. Up next, the role of men in traditional cultures.
When you provided, that's when you felt the most useful.
We go back to the beaches of Auk Bay in search of what it means to be a man. And two men from the gathering are here to give us an update on the men's movement when we come back. When they gathered in Juneau to launch a men's movement, they expected talks about what men can do to protect women and children, but never dreamed that they'd wind up on a rocky beach cutting up seal meat. Traditionally, men were protectors of women and children, not feared as perpetrators of violence.
Every single man here, they have a relative or a friend, close friend that has experienced domestic violence, that has experienced assault. Every single man here, and there's no way around it.
Except to help men understand that to be truly strong is also to be vulnerable, and above all, respectful.
Keep in mind that this was a living being. It gave its life to us, so we don't want to say anything that would disrespect this being.
4 seals were harvested to be divided and shared with elders, along with meat from another animal.
In Tlingit, we call it kashakach.
Porcupine, a delicacy among the Tlinkits of southeast Alaska, but also valuable for their quills and guard hairs, used for ceremonial clothing. Another lesson on how men contributed.
For the first few cuts, just go down through the fat.
Lyle James has put the men who already know how to butcher seals in charge.
We'd wrap them in grass.
Casey Ferguson explains how the meat from the flippers was fermented.
It's really sweet. It's really good. At least we think so. It's an acquired taste for sure.
For many coastal communities, the seal was a symbol of manhood.
Traditionally, in our culture, when a man brought a seal home, that was his job. And when you provided, that's when you felt the most useful.
It can be hard to feel useful in today's cash economy, especially in small villages where jobs aren't easy to find, where the loss of status has taken its toll.
In our community, recently we've lost 2 of my granddaughters very violently, very violent. And there has to be some way in order for us to stop the killing, to stop the abuse.
One way to start, to help men understand what it means to be a man. What, in your view, makes a good man?
He listens and he talks with his family. He doesn't just go off and do things without them knowing what's going on.
He must also be tuned into his surroundings.
If you see someone being beaten or someone being cursed at or being just mistreated, to say something.
One of the most hardest questions that the men were asked, what is love? That's a pretty deep question for a man to ask, especially in Alaska. We have to catch the most fish, we have to be the best hunters. Automatically putting yourself up on top.
Instead, putting others first, a way of thinking that has to begin early. Just watch this small child's face. You can see how boys naturally want to be helpful, a quality men can help foster if they stay mindful of their own behavior.
What you see is love for the land and the animals and respect. And I think that's really maybe what to me more is what masculinity is. It's not what you see on the outside.
Follow this here up. To me, the
What it means to be a man is to have patience, to be able to listen, and to be able to work with anybody who's willing to work with you.
Many of the men here have never done anything like this before.
It's a great chance to bond. It's a great chance to bond. And I don't think you can bond any better than this. This is amazing.
I just wanted to gift this to you.
In many ways, the work here was a rite of passage for the men to prepare them for when they go home, where they will have to continue to stretch their boundaries and be ready to engage in conversations that are difficult, painful, yet necessary.
Men from Nome, men from Chivak, Metlakatla, Juneau, and all corners of Alaska. When they go home, every single village in this state is gonna be influenced.
At the end of the men's gathering, plans were underway for a second conference, perhaps in Anchorage later this year. Doug Koester and Gary Neumann were at the men's gathering in Juneau. They're here now to bring us up to date. Doug is with Haven House in Homer and works in violence prevention. And Gary travels the state for an organization called Tribal Tech, working with communities on suicide prevention. It's interesting when you talk with men that don't know anything about this movement, but you bring up the subject, they get a little uncomfortable, they get a little giddy, and do you worry that you might be made fun of?
Personally, my worry is that people are going to misconstrue us into thinking that we're saying somehow masculinity is bad or that we have to become more like women for some reason. It's not that. What we're trying to express is we've all been constrained in this man box, meaning that you're only allowed to show certain emotions, anger, or you're supposed to have power and control over women.
Or show no emotions.
Yeah, or show no emotions, or or not ask for help. And that's really what we're getting at. We can go beyond that.
Have you been approached by people saying, what is this man's gathering?
Yeah, people have wondered, what are a bunch of men doing together, And
is it man bashing?
No, it was more about creating a safe place for men to be able to give themselves permission to feel, to talk, to express their emotions, where it's not typically something that we're allowed to do.
Well, this was a very emotional gathering, maybe in a positive way, and we have some photographs of the opening when there was sort of a community march in downtown Juneau. What was it like to be there in the middle of all of that?
It was so powerful just to see women and men coming together and expressing this idea of we have to do something. We have to be there for each other, and we can all do something.
And oftentimes change is preceded by a vision. And when I looked at the walk, that was our vision. We were moving towards doing something from here.
Because a lot of times people go, marches, we have them all the time. What was different about this?
That you weren't alone. There were other men, there were women, there were people from all over Alaska that were of the same heart to talk about this issue and say, we can't do it anymore. We have to stop it. And we have to stop it together.
Well, earlier in the show, we showed you some numbers about Alaska's high rates of violence, some of the worst numbers in the nation. But it seems like we're almost numb to that. But I want to show you some other numbers right now from a study on adverse childhood experience scores, known as ACEs. And when they talked with the adults in Alaska about what types of violence they had experienced as kids. More than 30% suffered emotional abuse, 19% physical abuse, 15% sexual assault. What do these numbers tell? What's the real story there?
For me, it's not the numbers. It's just that each one of these numbers is a person who's feeling and suffering, and that is rippling out and affecting all those around them. And we can be there for those people, but we can also start to address the historical trauma that has happened, not only in Native cultures, but all cultures.
We, I believe, are the first generation that is having the conversation about historical and intergenerational trauma. What are some of the effects of colonization and the boarding school experiences? what happened to our grandmothers that they never were allowed to speak about. They carried this deep inside them, this pain. And if we don't grieve that pain or those losses, it's passed on, we believe, in our DNA.
Well, you know, Doug, you come from a non-Native community largely in Homer. And so it's not just a Native problem that we're seeing. What are you seeing in your own community?
No, it is definitely, it is a problem that affects all of us. And what I see is in my work is there's not a lot of men stepping up to do anything. They're saying that's a women's issue, but what it isn't. It's men that are perpetrating some of these things, and they all have the potential to help out and to do something. And usually that means protecting our most vulnerable.
Well, you know, there was a lot of discussion about putting more tools in the man box. And it seems like a lot of these might have to start early, that kids have to learn about these tools. What are your thoughts?
I agree. We begin putting things in that man box from the time we're brought into this world. And we need to take a look at some of those that still work today, and some of those don't. And if they don't work, we can take them out and replace them with something else.
What's your sense of this? You know, how do we bring about this change?
Well, really, it's just giving ourselves the freedom to be more authentic, because the man box constrains us into being like, you can only be this way. And you know what? We have the ability and so much, you know, to be and act in so many different ways that are going to be beneficial to all of us.
You know, what I enjoyed seeing in this conference is kind of the beauty of men, because, you know, you kind of expect man bashing when you talk about domestic violence. And here we have some final parting shots of the close of the conference, and men are embracing. How did that feel?
It felt wonderful. It felt like we're beginning to do something, that this is a safe place where we can hug, and it doesn't mean anything other than we care about you, we're here together, we're here to move forward together.
And it's going to take that kind of bonding.
It really is, and just knowing there's other people out there that are working on this, and they're in my heart, and they're giving me the power to go on.
Well, we hear that there's a conference in the works, perhaps. What's the latest on that? Another one?
Well, we had a phone conversation yesterday, and right now there isn't funding to do it, so we're looking for funding to bring another gathering together. But one of the things that is happening from this gathering is it's like a water dropping into the ocean. It's a ripple effect, and the people that were at the gathering are taking this message home, having these conversations in their living rooms, in their longhouses, and in their ceremonial places, and saying, we need to do something in our village here, and it's spreading.
How do you feel about that? Taking that conversation out, is that going to be easy?
Well, I feel like it doesn't have to be some huge thing. You can just connect with you know, your brother next to you and be like, hey, this is what I'm feeling and I'm thinking about. What do you think? So we can all do our small part.
All right, well, I want to thank both of you for being with us. Now, if you want to know more about the men's movement, we will continue our conversation with Gary Neumann and Doug Koester online. You can just go to the Frontier section of KTVA.com to find our web extra. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next week.